My mother needed my house for her book club. The security system exposed her devastating lie that changed everything. When my aunt handed me her spare key during my business conference, I had no idea what the security footage would reveal, or how it would shatter our family forever. At 27, I never expected to own property in this economic climate, let alone a spacious colonial with a wraparound porch overlooking the Adirondacks. But 3 months ago, my grandfather, a peculiar yet prosperous retired architect who'd lived to 72, left me his cherished home and $95,000 in his will. He'd distributed his remaining assets among other relatives, but I'd always been his confidant during my graduate studies in environmental engineering. I moved in just 16 days ago, boxes still scattered in several rooms, but already felt at home among the exposed beams and wide plank floors. My parents were among the first people I invited to tour my inheritance. My father arrived promptly, genuinely thrilled for my good fortune, but my mother appeared with her teenage stepson in tow, despite my specific invitation for her alone. At 15, Lucas maintained a cold demeanor toward me, despite years of my attempted friendliness. I tried not to let it bother me. My parents divorced when I was 5, though remarkably maintained amicable relations throughout my childhood. They co-parented effectively, attending my science fairs and graduation ceremonies together without drama. I maintained close relationships with both until my mother remarried a litigator 3 years ago. Since then, she'd become increasingly distant. After spending 2 years dating her now husband, I'd met him several times and found him reasonable, which made her gradual withdrawal all the more perplexing. I rationalized her behavior. She had a new family requiring her attention, and I was established in my career at an environmental consulting firm. Nevertheless, I missed our weekly phone calls and monthly dinners. My father remained unmarried, which allowed our relationship to flourish. We'd grown closer during my mother's emotional retreat, meeting for hiking excursions and discussing everything from climate policy to relationships. Still, acquiring this house represented a significant milestone, one I'd hoped both parents would celebrate with genuine enthusiasm. My mother's demeanor during the house tour struck me as artificial. Gone was her typical warmth and humor, replaced by stilted conversation and forced smiles. Her stepson mirrored this behavior, examining my grandfather's antique telescope with disinterest. My father, meanwhile, admired the craftsman details and southern exposure, commenting how perfectly the property suited my personality. "I'd love to host Thanksgiving here this year," I mentioned as we stood on the porch. My father immediately offered to bring his famous apple cranberry stuffing, while my mother and Lucas exchanged a glance and remained silent. Their reactions should have forewarned me, but I dismissed my unease. Last Tuesday, my supervisor assigned me to present our environmental impact findings at a conference in Pittsburgh, a 9-hour drive from my home in northern Vermont. I hesitated to accept, primarily because I was expecting delivery of a limited edition vintage turntable for my partner's upcoming 4th anniversary gift. After months of searching online auctions, I'd finally secured one, and the seller confirmed delivery for my departure day. I considered asking my father to receive the package, but he'd planned a weekend canoeing trip with his hiking group. My partner, Elise, couldn't help as the turntable was meant to surprise her. My colleagues had conflicting schedules, and my neighbors, primarily retirees who viewed my presence with suspicion due to my youth, seemed an uncomfortable last resort. Unexpectedly, my mother called that evening. Our conversations had become increasingly rare and purposeful rather than casual, so I anticipated her request before she articulated it. She explained that her book discussion group needed an alternative meeting location because her husband would be working from home. She asked to use my house for an afternoon. The timing aligned perfectly with my delivery and conference, so I agreed without hesitation. This arrangement seemed fortuitous. My package would be received, and I could fulfill my professional obligations without worry. I handed her my spare key at a coffee shop near her office on Thursday afternoon. then departed for Pittsburgh. During the 7th hour of my journey, while passing through rural Pennsylvania, my supervisor called to notify me that our client had postponed the presentation after experiencing severe food poisoning. She apologized for the inconvenience, but instructed me to return home since the client had rescheduled for the following week. Frustrated but resigned, I stopped at a roadside diner to recalibrate my plans. While waiting for my order, I decided to test the security system I'd recently installed throughout the property. The cameras, accessible through a smartphone application, had been operational for just 3 days. What appeared on my screen stunned me into speechlessness. Rather than witnessing a circle of middle-aged women discussing literature in my living room, I observed dozens of teenagers overwhelming every visible space. They poured drinks in the kitchen, lounged across my furniture, and congregated around my grandfather's antique phonograph cabinet. The backyard teemed with more adolescents, several splashing in the ornamental pond. I immediately reversed direction, driving furiously back toward Vermont. By the time I arrived around midnight, the situation had deteriorated further. Music reverberating through the neighborhood greeted me blocks before reaching my driveway, where teenagers sprawled across my lawn nursing bottles and vaping. Inside, the cacophony intensified. Music pulsating through speakers I didn't recognize, the distinct odor of spilled alcohol permeating my grandfather's hand-woven rugs. After navigating through clusters of inebriated high schoolers, I located Lucas in my study. He lounged across my reading chair, feet propped on a stack of my environmental journals, surrounded by admirers hanging on his every word. When he noticed my presence, he merely raised an eyebrow before continuing his conversation. "Everyone needs to leave immediately," I announced, voice struggling above the music. "The party's over." Lucas regarded me with dismissive amusement. "My mother said we could use this place. You're not supposed to be here." "This is my home, not your mother's," I replied, struggling to maintain composure. "You have 15 minutes before I call the authorities." His friends exchanged nervous glances. Eventually, one murmured something about potential legal consequences, and reluctantly they began dispersing. Within 40 minutes, the house had emptied, leaving behind devastation, spilled drinks soaking into hardwood, cigarette burns on windowsills, and various personal items mysteriously absent. I immediately called my mother, trembling with indignation. "You lied to me," I stated when she answered. "You claimed this was for your book club, but instead you allowed Lucas to host an underage drinking party in my home." Rather than apologizing, she launched into a defense. "You're being completely unreasonable," she countered. "Lucas wanted to celebrate his academic achievements with friends. Your house has ample space that you're certainly not utilizing fully. He merely wanted to impress his classmates, and you've humiliated him by overreacting." Overreacting? There were intoxicated minors destroying my property. "Do you understand the potential liability?" "You've always been jealous of Lucas," she replied, her voice hardening. "You've resented him since we became a family. Now that you've inherited this windfall, the least you could do is share your good fortune occasionally." The conversation deteriorated further until she eventually declared, "You're responsible for cleaning your own mess. You created this situation by embarrassing Lucas." Then she disconnected and blocked my number. Exhausted and overwhelmed, I contacted her husband directly, explaining the situation and requesting financial assistance for professional cleaning services. To his credit, he appeared genuinely appalled, immediately transferring funds and promising to address the situation with both my mother and Lucas. The following morning, my mother called from an unknown number, livid that I'd tattled to her husband. "Lucas was right about you all along," she hissed. "You're impossible to please, always demanding attention and special treatment. No wonder we've grown apart." Her words cut deeper than the property damage. In her eyes, I had transformed from beloved daughter to inconvenient obligation, superseded by her stepson's preferences and desires. 2 weeks have passed since that devastating exchange. The house has been professionally cleaned, the delivery eventually redelivered, but the psychological wounds remain raw. I've decided to cease communication with my mother indefinitely, a decision my father supports after hearing my account. Your mother always gravitated toward social prominence, he explained gently. Lucas reminds her of herself at that age, popular, charismatic, the center of attention. You inherited my analytical nature instead. This explanation, while illuminating, provided little comfort. If my mother's affection depended on social conformity rather than character, perhaps its loss was inevitable. 3 days ago, Elise organized what I believed would be an intimate anniversary celebration at my home. Instead, I arrived to discover she'd arranged a gathering of our closest friends and family. After dinner, she knelt before me with a vintage emerald ring, her grandmother's, and asked me to marry her. Surrounded by genuine well-wishers, I accepted tearfully. My mother was notably absent. Elise had invited her despite our estrangement, but she declined, reportedly stating she no longer considered me family. Though painful, her absence clarified my path forward. I'm building a new family now, one based on mutual respect and genuine affection. The house that became the catalyst for family fracture will now witness the foundation of a new beginning. Sometimes inheritances reveal more than material wealth. They expose the true nature of relationships we thought unshakable. Looking toward my future with Elise in this beautiful home, I'm gradually releasing the expectations I once harbored about family obligations. The people who remain in my life, my father, my fiancé, my loyal friends, have proven their worthiness through actions rather than biological connection. As my grandfather once told me while showing me this very property, the strongest foundations aren't always the ones we're born with, but the ones we choose to build ourselves. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the channel for more family drama and life lessons. New content uploaded daily.